Welcome everybody to this webinar. We're delighted that you're here. My name is Anna Burhouse and I'm the Director of Quality Development at Northumbria Healthcare. I'm honoured to be joined today by an incredible panel of people. We've got Rosie Graham and Beth Banfield and Zoe Brewster from the Health Foundation with us. We've got Susie Bailey, Director of Leadership and Organisational Development from the King's Fund. We've got Andrew Seaton, Quality Improvement and Safety Director at Gloucester Hospitals NHS Trust. And we've got Sarah Campbell, Operations Director for Quality Improvement and Patient Safety at the Royal College of Physicians. We're your panel for today, and we're going to start with some presentations, and then we're going to be able to open up for questions as we go. The webinar is going to last for about 60 minutes and we're going to record it as we go, so if you want to listen back you can, or share with other members of your Q Exchange team. You can make yourself known by raising your hand on Zoom, and you can ask questions through Zoom as well as we go. So we're going to get cracking, and so I'm going to hand over to Zoe, who's going to just set the context for us about Q Exchange.
Great, thanks Anna, and welcome to everyone. Oh, let me just mute myself. There we go. Sorry about that. Oh. I think if you quickly mute yourself, Anna, there might be some. Sorry, just quick technical. Great, fantastic. So thanks, Anna, and welcome to everyone who's joined us today. My name is Zoe. I work at the Health Foundation and I'm the project lead for Q Exchange. It's the second time we're running this participatory funding program for Q, and this year we're calling for ideas on two themes, one of which is building improvement capability across boundaries, which is the focus of today's discussion. Through this theme, our aim is to have a more flexible call that involves building improvement capability in a way that spans at least one of the many boundaries that can often limit our potential as a system, and be able to share skills more widely. Of the 180 ideas published, 2/3 of them were related to this theme. So it's evident that Q members regard this as a really important topic and have a lot to share. I'm really looking forward to seeing how your ideas evolve over the next few weeks, and hearing from our speakers today about their experience and insight on this topic.
Great, thank you, Zoe. I'm going to hand over now to context to this.
Hello everybody, just check you can actually hear me. Just put the sound up. Anna?
Sorry,
it's all right.
Little bit of technical with this. Hang on a minute. This one. There we go. I'll get slicker at this, I promise, folks, as we go.
Easy. Easy. There we go. Okay, hi everyone, Susie Bailey here. I'm just going to take a few moments to talk about the national context, and when I'm talking about the national context I want to be clear that I'm going to give some of the recent history of what's happened in England, but very conscious that we will be speaking to key members from across the 4 nations in the United Kingdom, and in giving the English experience I just want to present that as a story really, and to impress on you that while we were developing the work in England, that we spent time visiting colleagues in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to listen deeply to their own experiences to help inform the work we were doing in England, and we continue to do that. So over the next few minutes I'm going to talk a little bit about the recent history in England, what's the current national approach. I'm going to give you a few thoughts on the early learning from integrated care systems, and also just give you some personal reflections on my experience of working in Sheffield health and care system, where we were trying to do exactly this, develop improvement capability across boundaries. So first of all, some history. Taking you back a kind of 4 or 5 years ago, which sounds like a long time in our health and care lives, but the imperatives for improvement are shown here through a series of national reports: the 5-year forward view, the review into leadership in the English NHS, various reports around culture and safety in the NHS, including the Kirkut review, obviously the report of the Mid Staffordshire public inquiry. So a number of reports showing some of the challenges around delivery of safe, high quality care, and also the cultural leadership a component that went with that. So those imperatives led these national organisations, and there are 13 national organisations, many of whom you will recognise, many of whom you might work for or work with. And really the challenge was how to get these organisations together to be able to really focus on what were the right work to be doing together, both in terms of the priorities for these organisations, but also in setting out a national framework. A huge component of that was around building capability for improvement, a recognition that the history in England was of trying to build capability very much from a centralist point of view, and the recognition that actually capability needs to be built at every level of the system, so local, regional and national. So it's quite a challenge bringing these 13 national organisations together, politics with a big P, politics with a small p, and it was really important to develop relationships at every level as we were developing this work. And we worked closely with the Health Foundation, colleagues at the King's Fund. We worked with Professor Don Berwick from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement in the US, really seeking advice, support and challenge for how this work would be developed. What was finally published, and it's very easy to flick a slide and say, ta-da, here it was published, but actually we listened very carefully to the experiences of people like you doing improvement work across the system around what might be, what needed to go into a national framework, and also what huge amount of work was still to be done. The national framework was finally published in December 2016, so it's still a relatively new piece of policy work. And the link to have a look at it is here. I hope many of you are familiar with this document already. What it contained was 5 conditions drawing on the research and evidence base internationally of what conditions we needed to create in England in order to create an environment in which more improvement, more continuous improvement could happen. And the 5 conditions were around leaders equipped to develop high quality local systems in partnership. So very much speaking to the topic of today's webinar. Compassionate and inclusive leadership. So how to distribute the model and make sure that people, whatever level of the health and care system were working, would be able to take local action, would be able to do improvement work where they work with their teams. Thirdly, knowledge of improvement methods and how to use them at all levels, recognition that actually we had no idea of actually the scale of improvement capability in the country. We had some very good examples, many of which the Health Foundation has obviously invested in, both individuals and teams, and a number of projects. But actually we had no measure of what the capability was, and the recognition that we needed to build that knowledge and capability in at every level. Fourthly, support systems for learning at local, regional and national levels, and obviously the QIP community and the development of that has been a huge part of developing that support system across boundaries. And fifthly, the condition 5 is enabling supportive and aligned regulation and oversight. And as I say those words, I can imagine some of the cynicism that many of you might be feeling who are listening into this webinar. But it was really important that when you go back to the 13 national organisations, it contains some of the key regulators in the English system. And what was really important was that this framework was not just about the work that people in a local setting could do around improvement, but actually how the national regulators could ensure that the work that they were doing was also encouraging that improvement work. So there were critically three pledges that were made. Pledge 1 was about supporting local decision makers, and particularly allowing local organisations and systems time and space to establish continuous improvement cultures. And that work is still ongoing, and I think is very much the subject of what we're here to discuss today. The Pledge 2 was about modelling the inclusive and compassionate leadership to establish those continuous improvement cultures. And again, a huge amount of work still to be done. And Pledge 3 was that the national organisations that were on that previous slide would use this framework as a guide, and that they would try to engage with the sector with one voice. And again, we still have some way to travel on that. This next slide is a picture of Dido Harding. She is the chair of NHS Improvement. And this quote comes out of the Interim People Plan, which is the plan that was published about 2 months ago now around the NHS. And in it, it makes an acknowledgement that developing people improving care as a national framework has made some impact. And in fact, some of the impact has very much been at the local level, but it has not yet led to the widespread cultural change around developing that capability it's set out to deliver. And I think what's important around this statement is that there is an acknowledgement by those national organisations that they have not visibly demonstrated the importance of this framework. So whilst they committed to it and they pledged to it, they haven't yet done enough at that level. So I'm pleased that that is in there. So the point I wanted to make in this section is that it's relational, relational, relational. Whatever part of the system you're working in, developing capability for improvement across boundaries requires you as an individual, you in teams, to actually make a relationship with others into the system. And this is this is underlined by the work we've been doing with integrated care systems. We wrote a report at the King's Fund over a year ago, listening to the journeys of the integrated care systems. And there are a number of observations in this document. You'll be able to see the summary on the website. The link is here on the slide. But it might seem quite obvious, these lessons, but surprise, surprise, investing in collaborative relationships can only be done locally, and you have to give it time and commitment. And when we talk to chief executives up and down the country, they tell us about how much time it takes for them to actually spend time with their colleagues in local systems. We have to promote and value system leadership, not just leadership within single organisations, placing emphasis on that, on the collective. And we really need to draw on the skills and leadership of frontline staff. We have to involve staff. And, you know, I'm preaching to the converted here on a Q webinar, but the ICS, the lessons from the ICS are reinforcing all the things we know about developing continuous improvement, developing improvement capability, and creating the right cultures in which staff are able to see the issues, solve the issues, and then share their learning about them. So just coming on to an example from Sheffield, which is, as many of you might know, I was the Service Improvement Director in Sheffield over 5 years ago. We had a wicked problem around the care of frail elderly patients, and we were locked in a pattern of blame. In the hospital, we were blaming social services and social care. We were blaming GPs. Internally, clinical teams were blaming each other because there were difficulties with flow, and patients weren't getting good care, and staff were under a huge amount of pressure. And we were locked in that pattern for quite a while. And we were fortunate through having investment from the Health Foundation and developing some capability to start thinking about how we could break this pattern and actually improve care. And looking at the work of Marshall Gantz in social movement theory, you know, his premise is very much that deep reform rarely emerges from within government. So you can have national frameworks to develop capability, but unless staff actually have the opportunity to practice it locally. And his work is also about how do you translate your values into emotional resources that allow you to respond to the challenge with courage rather than through fear. And I think we were locked in a sort of fear and blame for a while, and we really needed to move to courage. So I'll move on to the next slide because it's probably easier. We basically took lessons from Toyota in developing a big room approach, and those of you that will be familiar with the work of the Flow Academy will understand this, but essentially a way of doing improvement by bringing people together to solve together. So rather than doing it in meetings that happened sporadically, actually having a rhythm to the meetings and having a room that people would come to do the work. And if I flick on to the next slide, you'll see some of the staff who were some of my team in this room and other clinical and managerial colleagues from across the hospital. Ultimately, developing this work meant that it was standing room only in this room. But the principle was actually about testing changes and working together on things that actually really mattered to patients. And we developed a patient called George, who was a synthesis of many of the patients that the team were working on at the time. And the way of using this room was to actually bring data together so that we could actually improve care for George. And that's how these meetings started. How would we improve care for George? And the other point I wanted to make is building capability across boundaries to do improvement work requires us to get out from where we currently work. And some of the best money I spent as a service improvement director in Sheffield was a return train ticket to get 3 clinical staff on a train down to see colleagues in Reading and actually see what they were doing there. Not because they were going to transport back exactly what Reading were doing. So it wasn't a lift and shift of let's do Reading in Sheffield, but because the train journey was quality time for them as a team to talk about what they wanted to do. They were inspired what they saw in Reading, and the clinical director, when he came back, raised the bar higher than any executive director could have done around what we wanted to do to improve care. So, you know, spending money on trains, planes if necessary, buses, cars is incredibly important if you want to build capability for improvement. So my final points are really around the role of collective leadership as an underpinning for developing improvement capability. And here is the analogy of a jazz band. Whether you like jazz or not, jazz is a beautiful blend of a skill set of people who are skilled with their own instruments, but collectively create something much greater. And underpinning improving capability across boundaries is the principle of collective leadership. How we create an environment in which leadership is the responsibility of all, that you're able to take expertise where appropriate, that you share the leadership, that it's interdependent and collaborative, and that you have a consistent approach. And fundamentally, as improvers, we're remaining curious in the work that we're doing. So I'd like to finish by saying that we hear a lot in the health and care services about having a burning platform. Peter Fuder's work is around needing the importance of a burning ambition, and that also speaks to Marshall Gant's work as well. Motivation is a fire from within. If someone else tries to light that fire under you, the chances are that it will burn very briefly. So fundamentally, from national to regional to local, it is about aligning the ambition that we have for our patients and communities alongside the skill set of quality improvement in order to improve capability across boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. That was an amazing kind of free flow from the national down to the local and your roots in Sheffield. So thank you very much. We're going to move now to Andrew, who's in Gloucestershire, and he's going to describe exactly what Susie's been talking about how you start to get this burning ambition going at regional level and how you build collective leadership across the system. So thank you, Andrew.
The fact that we've designed our approach right from the beginning. We haven't designed it to deliver training, we've designed it to deliver widespread improvement. So using our model for improvement, as everyone tends to do, that was our original goal. And I think it's important for everyone to think about when you're doing a local building of capability and capacity, that's what your goal should be, not about how many people trained. So our measures were around how many programs of improvement we deliver, and we've really built it around social movements, adult learning, recognition and reward, and really what's in it for the people who need to be doing the extra pieces of work around improvement. One of our key fundamental theories, though, is it's not just about the theory, it's about delivering improvement. And so when we designed our pathway, we really thought about this. So our bronze program is designed to build our social movement, and it's for everybody. It's face-to-face, it's not e-learning or any of those other things that you can do. It's about building that social movement right from the beginning, and most of our people at Adduction go through that now. The silver program, though, is what's in it for you, what's in it for an individual, and we looked at a range of different motivations and extrinsic and intrinsic motivators, but particularly what happens is that staff around our hospital bring in their own projects that they need to do in their own area, and we help to shape that through giving them some knowledge and support around the model for improvement and other tools, but also we help them coach and refine the project so they leave our program of 1.5 days of silver training with an almost formed project that they can go and deliver in their local area. We then bring them back and help coach them over 6 or 7 months as they deliver the project. Our goal, which I'll talk about a little bit more, is about how we're now spreading across boundaries throughout our organisation our improvement methodology. Sitting alongside that programme, there is the design of how we want to break down our barriers and deliver quality improvement across the organisation. So I think sometimes we forget that we just talk about quality improvement, but actually what we're talking about is a quality management model for an organisation. So our quality management model is on one page. We think it's important for people to provide assurance and measure areas of care that they think are important for their patients or their service. We want to be better at learning and be reactive and feed that through. People need to understand that they're safe today. And also, the main thing that we're talking about today is, so all of that data brings together what we would describe as our improvement plan, our improvement program. And that's led and delivered by the specialty. Because the important thing is to understand that I'm just checking that I've shared my screen now.
Hi, Andrew. I don't think your screen was sharing.
Okay.
So I have put it up, but if you want to take back control, otherwise I will move forward for you.
I think I've shared it now. Sorry, I thought I clicked on it.
Okay, cool.
Did the rest of it make sense, or should I flick quickly through the previous slides?
Apparently,
oh, that looks good.
That's it, good.
Okay. So we designed our program to deliver improvement, is what I was saying. So that was slide 1. That's really important. It's not about delivering training, it's about delivering improvement. So we designed our academy around that. It's all, not the theory, but it's the practice that's the value in a local system. Our program has 3 phases: bronze, silver and gold. Silver being the real catch for practitioners, because that helps them deliver improvement in a project around their area. And then I was moving on to, that has to be part of a quality management system, which looks at assurance, looks at learning and how we learn. Are we safe today? And then how we do those specialties based on all of their data, the research and assurance, etc., as well as their learning from incidents and things. Does that create an improvement project? And all of that is around what's important for your patients. I was moving on to the complexity then. It's important to understand we live in a complex world. This is a great diagram which was done by the King's Fund some time ago. But we have to recognise that that's what it's all about, really. We don't have a linear process for all of this. So the design of your environment is really important. So that whole social movement for us was really important. So we did build this brand, and we did it intentionally, so that people could recognise and want to be part of that brand, part of that club. So we have banners, we have badges, we have award ceremonies, and we share everything. And what we've created from that is quite an amazing network now, all hosted by the Academy, GSQI Academy. So we have a great relationship with our academic health science network, great partnership working right across the whole of the West of England. We have a really good relationship and sharing with the Academy of Fab stuff. We have our own local people involved in that who support the Academy. We share everything on our website and our intranet. You can see all the projects we've delivered on our external internet. We're working very closely with the Integrated Care Service to try and create that environment in the whole of Gloucestershire. Some really exciting work I'll talk a little bit about in a second. And then also, out of all this sharing, we've created something called the Delivering Improvement Network. And this is because so many people were coming to us and asking us what we're doing and how we do it. We now have a big national improvement network. People join every quarter, and we just discuss different methodologies and techniques and what's worked, what hasn't worked. It's been really very fruitful in terms of sharing across boundaries. That then also through one of my colleagues, Lou Waters, and some people from different parts of the organisation started talking about the tweet chats that we do now and host, QI Hour. And of course we network with Q, which has been a great adventure for us. Just to show you what you can do if you start thinking wider than your own organisation and how you can get information in and out of it and how you can spread knowledge and great improvement, this is our second or third tweet chat we did about a month ago now with Sam Riley, the Academy hosts it, but we have great support from a team from across the country. And you can see the impressions, 1.7 million impressions over a 24-hour period that we had from that tweet chat. It's just an amazing way of crossing those boundaries, those formal boundaries, and really integrating into different parts of the system and your own county and your own areas. Great way of sharing information. Working with the ICS, we've been able to work very closely with several projects, sepsis being one of them. And that's One Gloucestershire approach has been something that's really helped us work across the boundaries, still in its early stages, but really useful. And we also, with the Academic Health Science Network links, we've used cross-boundary working to introduce news, and now News 2. And in our own Gloucester Healthcare Task Group, supported by the Academic Health Science Network, we have our hospitals, our care service and Together Trust, which is the mental health trust. We've had GPs involved, nursing homes, the out of hours GP service, the clinical, the CCG, and our ambulance service. So it just provides you with it. We created this environment. People can see it's the GSQI. People understand that to be an improvement approach and methodology and a system, and people join into it very readily once they can see that and recognize it and know that what we're talking about is delivering improvement. So that's probably all I need to say at the moment, but if anybody wants any more information, please contact us and we can share some other information. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. That was amazing. It was just great to hear how much kind of experience that you've got in this area, and also just to see the impact that you can have when you kind of join together. I think that's what's so exciting about what you're describing. And I know from having had conversations with you that also you've really kind of developed a common language across Gloucestershire, which is really important for this too, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's creating the right environment, isn't it? Because you don't need to come up with all the ideas yourself, but if you can create the environment and the feel of the organisation as wide as you want to take it, then people will innovate and join in and start delivering improvement. Then it becomes the way of doing things, and that's what we're finding, certainly within the hospital, but of course wider across the boundaries. So.
Brilliant, brilliant. And there's quite a few kind of Q exchange ideas that are around STPs or ICSs. So I hope this is relevant for a lot of people that have got ideas in this area. Thank you for that. I'm sure there'll be questions later on, and we'll bring you and Susie back in on that. I'm now going to move to think about a slightly different way of doing kind of improvement across the boundaries. I'm being told my screen is kind of here. Let's see. Is that working?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah. Oh, hang on a sec, folks. Right, just have to zoom forward a second for some reason. So, still not showing. What's this about? Sorry, everybody. It's always the technical bits of these. But, let's do new share. Let's see if this will work from here. Okay. There we go. Have you got me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Lovely. Oh. Right. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about HIP QIP. So HIP QIP was a scaling up program, was developed by Mike Reed and Annie Laverty in Northumbria after they'd spent some years actually developing a successful QI approach locally. With support from the Health Foundation, we decided to try and spread this kind of work to 6 other organisations across Scotland. So HIP QIP is a way in which we were working together to try and improve the care of older people who've had a hip fracture. And working together as 6 teams, we brought together all of these different kind of working groups that looked at all of the complicated issues that there were around improving care for older people. And the idea of the Scaling Up programme really was to spread this learning from Northumbria by joining up with these other 6 trusts from across the UK. The collective aim was to improve patients' lives by building improvement capability across the boundaries. I think it's important to say certainly that Northumbria's attitude to this was that we knew that we would learn as much from the other teams as we wanted to share with the adopting teams. And our underpinning philosophy was that every person in every team had something to teach and also something to learn, and that by sharing this knowledge, we'd all be stronger as a result. So we did this by helping to build improvement. Each of the adopting teams received monthly improvement coaching, attended learning events, and they contributed data to a shared measurement framework. And I think if I had one top tip about building improvement capability across boundaries, it would be set a shared purpose, measure against your aim and see how you do, because certainly that for us was a really important part of this work. And we had national support from the British Orthopaedic Association to help with this too. And they did a brilliant job of telling us how we were all getting on. Another fundamental thing for us was that we involved real-time patient experience. And we put co-production at the heart of it. It's a fundamental part of our joint improvement methodology. And we also took some kind of steps to have innovative approaches to new kind of roles in organisations. And so across the sites, we employed 5 new nutritional assistants that helped to help some of these older people get the greater kind of calorie counted that they needed. That was part of the evidence base about how you kind of improve survival rates after surgery. So I want a little drum roll now, really, for all the teams that kind of took part in this, because this slide is an utter and complete joy to me. It shows the incredible impact that this way of collaborative working across boundaries can have. We've got 119 lives saved so far. We've got 100 extra patients returning to their own homes. And actually, I could have filled this slide with the results. But I think what underpins them is, and it's very true here, of, we recently, last week, we won the Patient Safety Award for the Perioperative and Surgical Care Award. And for me, what this picture symbolises, it is the 6 adopting teams and Northumbria managing to have this collective impact for the best interests of patients. And the bit that you don't see, really, is the bits that Susie was talking about. The collective leadership, the effort of all of the teams to get there, that every single person's input helped. And we have learned, and I think there's quite a good theoretical base for this too, that adopting teams improve and enhance the original work. They add in their innovative ideas, they bring in new ways of working. It's definitely a better HIP QIP now than it was when Northumbria started. So there's something about the collective wisdom of the crowd that's really important in this space. And I think hopefully by sharing this with you, it'll inspire you to think about what's possible when you kind of increase and invest in that improvement capability building at scale across the UK. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to invite Sarah to share her slides now and to take the lead and to think a little bit about what the RCP are doing around this space too. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Anna. Hopefully the slides have popped up for everybody. Let's get it started. So thank you. As Anna mentioned, I'm Operations Director at the Royal College of Physicians for QI and Patient Safety. And I just want to talk you through our collaborative series and what we've learned through the process of running them. A quick one about RCPQI. We were established in 2017 and our job really is to try and professionalise quality improvement for our physician fellows and members. I don't know why it's going forwards. 1 second. And we're doing that through a series of work schemes around building skills, leadership for improvement, and we're really trying to create networks of all the great improvement stuff that's already going on out there, whether it be led by physicians and their teams or others. And we were established on the back of a successful 3 years of the Future Hospital programme. And the success of Future Hospital, I think, lay in the fact that the strength of it was that we were doing it through multidisciplinary teams and trying to break down the professional boundaries and getting people together to transform services and improve patient care. And with that in mind, we wanted to continue that throughout RCPQI, so established our collaborative programme, and it's very quickly become the backbone of what we do. We use a tried and tested model of the breakthrough series methodology used by the IHI in the States. And as you can see here, we bring together 8 to 10 multidisciplinary teams for intensive collective learning sessions. They're all structured events, plus coaching in between, and I'll come on to the importance of that in a minute. But we use tried and tested methods. Andrew's already shown the model for improvement. That's absolutely at the heart of what the collaboratives are trying to teach. And they're led by very experienced faculty members who have led improvement, who are still active in improvement, and have really seen results in their own services from using tried and tested methodology of their own. You'll see at the bottom where we've run 2 collaboratives around IBD, 1 in smoking cessation, 2 in inpatient diabetes, and 1 in preventing secondary fractures. And that one on smoking cessation in particular stands out, I think, because that was a bit different from the other models. It wasn't a prescribed service or a set or fixed team. So their teams did come together across organisational boundaries and pathways to do something that was really important, not only from a policy perspective, but population health as well. In the pipeline, we've got collaboratives on ward rounds, 1 on cardiology, and a rerun of secondary fractures, because that's proved extremely popular. So just to talk a bit more about that timeline and how the collaboratives operate, you'll see the 3 learning sessions there, and then a final feedback session for the evaluation. But that bit in between, the action period, I think is where the real sort of improvement work happens. Like Andrew said, we're not there to deliver training, but we're there to deliver improvement, and that's really where it happens. And through our coaching, encouragement, keeping in touch with people, it's about keeping up the momentum in between the face-to-face opportunities for learning, and incredibly valued by the teams involved. We're getting really great feedback from the collaborative series. Just a few words here that have come through the evaluation. We're delighted that the days are really dynamic. The teams get really stuck in and involved. What I think is coming through for me, which is really exciting, is that people leave the collaborative programme far more confident, not only to do improvement, but also to teach improvement. So they're spreading it throughout their own organisations, and maybe taking that one project and turning it into something else and something else again, which I think is really exciting. And they are making improvement happen. I haven't shared any data here, but we are getting great outcome data now from the teams. It's still early days for most of them, but the trajectories are good, and the SPC charts being used well. So we're excited to follow up and find out how they get on. This is a picture from our Smiley secondary fractures cohort in Liverpool, and again, it's just that sense that being involved in the collaborative is enabling the teams to prioritise improvement rather than just keep trying. We give them momentum, and these opportunities to share and protected times with their teams are really proven valuable, and also that sharing across different organisations and teams as well. I think if we're going to do anything differently or improve and expand our offer, we'll get better at our patient involvement, and maybe over time even make it a non-negotiable for participation that a patient needs to be involved in the team. Like I say, we're doing more around evaluation on outcomes from care and improvement, and we're doing more to keep in touch with the teams at regular intervals, but even past the 6-month progress stage, to really start sharing and seeing the results. And just finally, just to say thank you very much. And if you want to hear more from us or see more about us, those are the ways to keep in touch. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. I think what Andrew has shown and what Susie has shown, and hopefully the work from HIP QIP have shown us alongside yours, is that through having an improvement aim and then through directing collective effort and shared purpose, actually you then create people that go away maybe from that year-long programme or 2-year programme with lifelong learning about how to do improvement. So I guess what we're all saying that these things have in common is that kind of experiential learning on the job about how to do improvement, which is so important. So thank you, that was great. So this is your space, people that are kind of joining in. If you want to send us any questions or queries, that could either be a direct question for any of the panelists, or it could be a thought or an idea. Or you could comment using your own experience about your experience of kind of trying to build improvement capability. And also we know that some of you that have registered have also registered for one of the Q exchange ideas. So if you want to share any dilemmas you've got about that, or any thoughts, or need any help from any of our panelists, we are the most willing group of people you can ever find want to try and give you a bit of a helping hand. So I'm just going to pause a second, look at the team to see if there have been any questions coming through. None yet. Okay. So I am going to maybe then go to Susie, if that's okay, and say, you know, you've got this incredibly long track record of being involved in improvement in lots of different settings. And I know from your background, you've worked in virtually every NHS service there is to work in.
I haven't done primary care. But
we can say that you've got great experience. What do you think then is the role of leadership in improving capability across these boundaries, Susie?
Okay, so I think, so there's 2 things I'd like to talk about. One is around the role of leaders, and the other is really about leading. Because I think certainly senior leaders and people kind of at the middle tier, so sort of middle managers, have a huge responsibility actually in creating the right environment in which staff can develop this capability. Because as we've just heard, you know, in the example from Andrew and also from Sarah, that actually it's not about training, it's not about going on a course, it's actually the lived experience of doing improvement work, which is where you learn. And the ability to do that is created by a culture in which learning is part of everyday work. And one of the biggest barriers that I certainly found when I was working in Sheffield teaching hospitals was general managers saying to me, look, we'd love to do this improvement work, Susie, but we just don't have the time. And I think there's a huge responsibility for senior and middle tier leaders to create space for staff to do this work. And creating space means getting rid of wasteful meetings, getting rid of wasteful tasks, and actually thinking quite creatively about how to do improvement. One of the things that we learned through the big room approach in Sheffield was that actually getting improvement into a rhythm, a 1 hour weekly meeting in that room, which was actually a kind of small coffee room, it was certainly not grand, was actually the rhythm of meeting meant we could find an hour in the week. Actually, it was possible to do it. So I think leaders have a huge role. They don't have to be deep specialists in improvement skills themselves. And I think that's something we talk to boards a lot about. It's like they don't have to be deeply skilled at leading improvement, but they need to understand what their role is in leading improvement. And my point about leading as opposed to leadership is that collective leadership piece, which is that we need to help have the conversation as leaders with staff that actually their everyday interactions in teams is what creates the local culture. So whilst I might need to role model what's important around improvement in my role, actually it's the day-to-day practice of teams. So we need to talk about their role in leading, even if they don't have a formal leadership role.
Fantastic. Thank you, Susie. I think what you're highlighting really is the importance of leadership at all levels, isn't it, to make improvement work. So great. We've had a lovely question here from Geraldine. This is going to make my day, this question, right up my street. And I'm going to ask Andrew and Sarah to kind of give their opinions on this. So what's the panel's opinion about bringing an element of fun into QI experience? Maybe if we hear from Andrew first and then go to Sarah, how about that?
Hi, well, we deliver everything we do with fun. From the training and coaching we do to anything, any exercise, you know, we blow bubbles and test those and all sorts of things. So, you know, enjoying it. But I think there's something else around that, in that we also do the celebration bit, and we now, our celebration when people have delivered their improvement projects, we have a celebration event 4 times a year. And that's all about them showing off and really being proud and enjoying what they've done, and the pride and the fun that they have doing that, and the sense of achievement is really quite an important part of that, creating the right environment for people. So, you know, the thing that they take back though is they can feel, they get the joy, if you like, out of the fact that they've changed something locally for themselves and their team. So that's how I would view fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We try and inject a lot of fun and interactivity on the collaborative days. You know, there's animations, there's drawings, there's lots of, you know, what probably seemed like downtime, but is actually just injecting a new approach to it, and everybody's learning and interacting, but also enjoying themselves at the same time. And I was just thinking about an example. We've just given a prize to a CMT, a core medical trainee who had led improvement work in her organisation. She's a trainee gastroenterologist and was trying to improve the recording of very sick elderly patients' bowel movements. And I think she'd felt the sort of pressure of trying to engage people with that. So she'd actually made a cake in the format of a stool chart, which had ingratiated her through cake, but also, you know, played into a kind of comedy element in the gastro department. And we gave that piece of work an award because it had really stuck with people. It had worked out well. She'd shown measurable results, and the team had really come together because she'd taken a really novel approach to getting people amused or engaged in the process as well.
Oh, fantastic. They're both brilliant examples. Certainly in HIP QIP, we had a lot of laughs. At the end, when we were having a celebration event, we gave a golden HIP award to the various teams for the things that they did the best. And also our nutritional assistants, they were absolutely brilliant in the different organisations coming up with how to introduce older people to eating more. So they put on tea parties. There was one with a vintage theme. There was one where they brought in their best china, and they just made it a very fun social experience. So I think those are all great things. I'm also aware that all of you out there can unmute yourselves and you can join in too. So I'm just going to pause to see if anybody's got any great examples of their own of bringing fun into QI, and maybe put it back to you, Geraldine. What have you done that we could learn from?
Geraldine here. I've got Ian Neville with me as well, one of our colleagues in the improvement team at Bournemouth. Hi. Hello?
Hi all.
Hello.
That's lovely.
Oh, hi, sorry. Right, one of the things that the team here has developed is a game called Game of Flow, which is a bit of a pun on the Game of Thrones. But what we found is that it breaks down boundaries between different departments and different, in fact, we're running at other hospitals as well, to look at the challenges of flow through the hospital, but done in a, shall we say, competitive and fun and interesting way. So that's why we were interested in your thoughts on the element of fun in quality improvement.
We find it kind of makes the training and the learning experience more memorable, and we've had excellent feedback in terms of the interactive nature of it and the fact that it is slightly competitive, so there's all sorts of shenanigans going on. But I think it's around just trying to deliver training in a different way. One of the speakers earlier on mentioned e-learning and the standard presentation formats, but we just want to try something completely different.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think sometimes we forget that in our early years, we spend most of our time learning through play. And then it's almost like we get 18 and we're supposed to just be very serious at work sometimes. So fantastic idea. And I know you've got your idea up on Q Exchange, haven't you? So are you looking for any particular support that you want to open up to this group?
Yeah, really, it's about how to engage, because the proposal is to perhaps take the game of flow to other trusts, other providers, and I guess the question would be how to maximise engagement in terms of doing so, how to spread the word and sell the message, really.
Fantastic. So I think let's put, we've got the internal special interest group on the Q Exchange to put those kind of questions on. So let's put that one on there after the event and see what people say. People could message in the column here as well if they've got any brilliant ideas about it. But good luck, Game of Flow. In fact, we were just talking about Game of Thrones before we got going. So that's really funny. So there's a question here from I don't know what your first name is, so it says here, has anybody tried peer-to-peer shadowing within or across organisations to develop improvement capabilities? And I have got Susie Bailey on hand to give you her thoughts.
So I just wanted to give a local example, really. Bob Claber, who's a lovely paediatrician over at Imperial Healthcare, has had experience of doing exactly this, doing peer-to-peer shadowing, and he describes some shadowing he did with a service manager, and how much he learned through spending time with the service manager, and how much the service manager learned spending time with him. And using this local experience that he's done with a number of trainees at Imperial, we're actually doing some work. Imperial, Royal Free, King's Fund and colleagues at NHS Improvement have got together, and we now meet 3 times a year, and we're just about to kick off paired learning in the next 6 months, which is really an entirely voluntary opportunity for staff working in those 4 organisations to do exactly what this questioner has asked, which is to link up with a peer in another organisation and walk in their shoes, something that I know the Health Foundation encourage us to do. So we're very happy to share our experience of doing that. As we do it, we're quite excited about it. We think we can have some fun with it, going back to the previous question. But it's very much learning from some experience that Imperial did, an idea that Bob started off, and now we're going to test it in a bigger way.
Lovely, love that idea. I've also heard quite a lot recently about reverse mentoring.
Oh yes,
which is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to explain the idea, Sue?
Yeah, so I would imagine several people dialed in are probably doing reverse mentoring, but what I can say is that as an exec director at the King's Fund, I am being reverse mentored by a fantastic young woman from an Asian background who works at the King's Fund, and I have to say it's an incredible joy to spend time with her and to debate some of the challenges in both of our roles, and I'm learning a huge amount from it. As all of the exec team have a mentor in that way, our chairman and a couple of our non-execs as well, and I'd really encourage colleagues to think about having a mentor from another setting.
Oh, it's brilliant. I'm wondering whether, Sarah, you, through the collaboratives, whether you did peer-to-peer shadowing, and also Andrew, I'm wondering, I know that you get a lot of different teams together, and I wondered if you wanted to kind of comment on what it's like when you bring people kind of out of their kind of home comfort team and bring them together to have more kind of collective learning.
Yeah, Gabby's on the line. She may want to chip in about collaboratives. I'm not aware of anything particularly formal, but of course links are made and ideas are shared. In the future hospital programme, I think one of the sort of unintended side effects of the programme was the network it brought to us, and we ended up often acting as a sort of speed dating facility, really, to put teams and people together. And, you know, even internationally, we'd have people coming over and visiting our development sites or just areas of great practice that we knew. And it was not only great for the people coming to learn, but the team as well, to be able to kind of show off and share what they were doing as well. Great to get that recognition, and an opportunity to sort of exercise their thinking, their journey, their processes with, you know, a wide-eyed audience as well, and sort of suck in ideas from elsewhere as well. So I think it's incredibly useful, and it can keep things really vibrant, I think, for all participants.
Fantastic, thanks Sarah. Andrew, I've just seen there's a couple more questions come in, so maybe we'll just take those if that's okay, then come back to you. So Julie has made a great question. So she's looking to do to bridge those boundaries between improvement practitioners and educationalists. And then Isabel as well has kind of got a related point, I think, which is, you know, how do you kind of stop QI being kind of jargonistic, and how do you make this something that kind of feels a bit more kind of relevant to everybody? So Andrew, do you want to pick that one up and have a play with that question?
I didn't quite hear the first question, but it was about using jargon and making it, can you just...
Yeah, so the second question was, how do you kind of help people that maybe are not familiar about QI? So, you know, someone on the front line that's never done any QI before, how do you get over the jargon? And then there was a lovely kind of comment from Julie too about if you were trying to link improvement practitioners with, say, educationalists, where there's it might be a completely different culture and language, how would you make that bridge happen?
I think the jargon thing is really quite important because it puts people off straight away. So we, although we talk about the theory, it is the game playing that sort of embeds it. Rather than being really, I find that rather than being really strict with the, this is how you do a PDSA cycle, and if you just get them to do some local testing and don't call it PDSA, and then they start to understand what they're trying to do. So we talk a lot about just test and learn, just have a go and see what happens. And, you know, you change your own language to encourage them to do it. And it quite usefully, as an example, I was supporting the emergency laparotomy work that was being done in the south of England with our surgeons. And we went through, they actually created driver diagrams and all sorts of line charts and SPC charts and things, but they didn't really, we weren't talking about improvement in a technical language when they were doing it. I was just helping them develop these things. And at the end of the project where we were doing, one of the surgeons said, "Hey, I found this great book on QI that they give me. Do you want it?" So they didn't realise I was actually a quality improvement sort of coach in that sense. So I think there's something about the language, isn't there, and freeing the people in front of you to learn QI, but without the technicality of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that sometimes simply asking people what matters to you is a great opener for conversations about quality. So we have 2 minutes left, everybody. It's been a very fast and furious webinar with a few technical difficulties, for which I apologise. Everybody can get the slides afterwards. We'll share those. And if anybody had a burning question that they weren't feel that they were able to ask or get answered, then do join the special interest group in the Q Exchange. I'm hosting that group, and I will absolutely pick up any questions that you've got after this webinar. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's joined us today. Thank you so much for your contribution in the chat. I can see Matthew, for instance, who's been sending incredibly helpful links out to people. So thank you, and pointing out that Amy Edson is amazing, which Susie and I would be going, yes, yes, definitely. And thank you too to the Health Foundation team for supporting all of this today, and thank you for all your contributions. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Health Foundation team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.